Campbell of the Campbell firm PLLC, and I'm welcoming you to Spot the Issues. Today on Spot the Issues, we're going to be discussing what you can do to secure a renegotiation of your retail or office lease. In this time of the coronavirus, when all of the businesses in America are being affected, large and small, there is a need to discuss what are you supposed to do with all of the space that you have after all your employees are working at home or your business is otherwise affected. Maybe you need to get out of a commercial lease because you have closed your operations or are planning to close that location in favor of operating another location and trying to save the business overall. Maybe you have less need for the office because you are working remotely and most of your employees are working remotely. Maybe the price point relative to the market value today is simply less. And while one would say, don't go back on your word, the economic realities that we're all facing are such that it really is important to, what I say, talk turkey as they, about what's really happening in the economy and what's going to be happening with your lease. So there are lots of different things that you can do, and obviously you should seek the advice of an attorney qualified to talk about these kinds of issues. At the Campbell firm PLLC, we do represent our corporate clients in all kinds of different transactions, including commercial leasing, and would like to just give you a few practice points that you could discuss with your counsel or call us, and we'll be happy to have a courtesy consultation, brief one, to discuss whether representation of your entity would be a great fit for this firm and how we could help you. And so what I would like to just give you a couple of different tips. Ask for what you need. That's the first important thing. Don't be afraid to ask for what you need. This is going to be a running theme through most of these kinds of small sound bites that we're going to be posting on YouTube and on other social media outlets to just try to get the word out. The reason that you need to ask for what you need is because you might be surprised. The other party may need something from you also. So would it be better to put your head in the sand, pretend you're an ostrich, forget all about paying rent, waiting for the eviction notice to come, or waiting to see if you could settle it later? Cash flow is king, and you need to be aware that cash flow for not only you, but for the business that is the leasing company, the building owner, the leasing agent, the managing agent, the people who operate the doorman services, all of those kind of things are really, really important right now. And so they're having cash flow issues just as you are. If tenants don't pay, how will they pay their mortgage and all the services that they have, taxes, insurance, etc.? So as you can see, it's really kind of a domino effect. So ask for what you need. Don't be afraid. Second point is have pretty much a concrete proposal going into this. Don't just say, well, what are my options? You certainly want to be open to what options the landlord might propose, but be creative. Think about literally concretely what you need, what you can manage, what is your ask point. I've just worked with a physician in trying to craft an ask point so that they could, because their practice, needless to say, is a what I would call a non-emergency service type of practice, and they needed to have a discussion about what would be reasonable. So we started working on crafting a proposal concretely. Another one of my contacts has renegotiated their office lease and has wound up getting 4 months of free rent. Now you might say, well, that sounds great. What about month 5? Well, obviously we're all going to be dealing with this as we go. It's a work in progress. It's a fluid situation. So it's very, very important to at least try to address these matters right now. So figure out what you could ask. You could ask for a certain number of months waived. You could ask for a deferment. You could ask for a forbearance and the possibility of a deferment. Deferment meaning toward the end of the lease, kind of tacking it on and having either a balloon or over time for those additional months that you might have to pay over time. Or some other kind of creative process. But conceptually, trying to manage your cash flow is the idea. And again, you can do a couple of things, asking maybe for some of your security deposit to be applied to the month's rent that you might be able to not make, and then ask for that amount to be replenished. There's lots of different ways that money can be moved around on balance sheets, particularly if a landlord is holding that money in an actual separate escrow account where they actually would at least be allowed to take it out at that point. So again, lots of different choices, and we could get into more detail on that if there is a follow-on need and you want to have a courtesy consultation. Please certainly contact us, and we'll be happy to have a discussion with you. We practice in New York City and have an office in Manhattan and a secondary annex in Brooklyn. And one of the other critical points, our point number 3 here is, negotiate. Obviously, you have the option to potentially just exit the space. Now, do you have a good guy clause? Is that a good guy guarantee in your lease that allows you to, if you were a personal guarantor on that lease, are you able to just get out of it in a sense by having the business turn the keys back to the landlord? And maybe there's a cap on the amount of money that would be otherwise owed, especially if the business is going to be closing down and you want to sort of do damage control. So again, ask for what you need, have a concrete plan, and negotiate. These are the primary mechanisms by which you can start thinking about your commercial lease, and obviously get the modification in writing. Point number 4, okay? Obviously, if there's going to be a change, even if all you can get is an email at this point, because normally leases have to be amended in writing, obviously consult your lease, your original lease, look at the language about how modifications can be made, and worst case scenario, try to do a DocuSign, or even if all you can get is an email, some kind of confirmation from someone who's authorized to give that modification, not just some secretary there, but somebody who has the power, the right title, someone who can actually bind the landlord. And point number 5 is, if that doesn't work, then consider other options. You may have force majeure provisions of your lease that may help you if you need to exercise them. Most of the time, however, the force majeure provisions of the lease actually help the landlord, and just be aware of that. Now, if the landlord is not providing certain key building essentials, like they're no longer providing a doorman, there's nobody to collect the mail, there's no one to do anything on the office building, and consider whether that will be enough to try to exercise some rights that you might have. Now, as I said, normally those force majeure clauses, because these are often government enforced emergency orders of cutting operations for non-essential workers and things like that, that it may be that the government shutdown and so forth, as far as the stay-at-home orders and that sort of thing, will protect the landlord and not you. But again, these are things you're going to need to consult with an attorney to discuss, potentially, if that winds up being the way you have to go, which is really heading toward a litigation or arbitration route, depending on what your lease provides for. And you, if at all possible, want to avoid that and try to negotiate on the front end. As I said, the Campbell firm PLLC is a general practice law firm specializing in corporate and business matters, primarily across a variety of different platforms and industries. We have a business entrepreneurship practice. We have a intellectual property practice excluding patents. We have a practice for healthcare. We have a practice that is focused on criminal law. We have a practice focused on civil rights, and we have a practice that is focused on litigation. And in situations like this, litigation is certainly an option, including the possibility of having to deal with your landlord through a litigation process. But if at all possible, and you want to stay in business and you want to stay in that location, try to work something out. And again, I really thank you for tuning in to Spot the Issues. We will be with you through this coronavirus pandemic, trying to give you some tips and tricks to help successfully navigate these rough waters, and to work with your counsel to get at least some ideas in motion, and to help document whatever you're able to work out. Thank you for tuning in. Emily Campbell from the Campbell Firm PLLC, wishing you a speedy economic recovery.